teachers, for this week, you are going to go through the character analysis that your students did last week and just briefly talk to them about it. They should have brought in 5 pages of character incidences and details. And so I want you to try to draw out the marrow of the details, the most important parts of the details. So for example, if your student wrote in their details that for their historical story, maybe David designed the temple or something like that. Maybe they're doing their story on King David in the temple. I want you to draw that out with your students. I want you to ask them, well, why did God not allow David to build the temple himself? Or if they say, well, because he had been involved in too many wars, then ask, what did David feel about that? Did he sulk about it? Did he get upset about it? Or did he just accept it and do what God wanted him to do and try to make it as great as it could possibly be for his son? And if he's thinking about it for his son, what does he think? How does he think about himself for his legacy? And just draw out as much as you can from your students. If they're doing a testimony, get them to draw out their feelings, draw out what facial expressions there were. Were there tears welling up? Did they clench their teeth? Did their muscles in their shoulders tighten up? Get them to think about the whole body of their characters and what they're thinking about during the incidences that are happening. Just try to talk to them and draw out as many details as you can. So for that, about 15-20 minutes in class, I want you to have the students be taking notes. So they might hear about something from another student and think, that would relate well to my person, my character, so I can put that as a note in there for my character. So then the next part of the class, the teaching part, or the main teaching part, is who are you and who's the narrator? So that's this sheet right here. And this sheet is something that you'll give out in class, and you'll talk about who the person that is writing the story is. So, for example, in Anna Visits Mount Vernon, it's Anna speaking, but she's speaking in third person. So she starts out with, Anna was so excited. Anna was excited. It was the first day of Eden Hope Academy. She loved racing her brothers, Bo and Jack, through the doors of the small community church. They skidded to a stop in the hallway, narrowly missing Mr. Steve, the children's pastor of the church. Since it was their job to set up tables and chairs, they were used to being the only people in the building. All right, so in Anna's book, she is doing third person, meaning she's talking about herself in third person. She's not using the word I at all. And she is telling the story of how they visited Mount Vernon and they saw their friend Mr. Poole. So when she is explaining her story, it is from the context of an 11-year-old girl who goes with her large family to Mount Vernon and sees a neighbor. Another example of how to do this would be if the person is doing a testimony, it might be better if they do it in first person, and that's using I. So in Bully, Broken, and Redeemed, not the character, and remember your students can use a nom de plume, which is a pen name, and that protects them somewhat if they're doing things that could be used against them in the future. So encourage them, especially if they're doing something that's on the dicey side, that maybe a nom de plume would work. So Not starts out, I saw a cardinal as I walked to the bus stop. It was dark and the fog that lingered in the ground smelled like slightly rotten eggs. My mom wanted me to carry a flashlight, but that would have seemed totally lame. The brakes pumped and the cars sped past the bus's blinking red lights at 6:15 a.m. 7th and 8th graders sat on the first day quietly. I think we were all scared, even the 8th graders. What I didn't know was that I had entered the judgment. So that is his first paragraph, and that is all in first person. So part of this lesson is to have your students think about how they are approaching their audience. Are they approaching them as if they're speaking to them in first person, or are they telling them a story? So get your students to really think about how their audience is going to feel, and then have them write that down after they've considered it. Who is my audience? That's very important. For Not Kavanaugh, this young man wanted his audience to be children in schools, in public schools, who are bullied. And he wanted to show them that there was a way out, and he wanted to also teach the parents the type of pain that he had gone through. For Anna, in her book, she wanted to teach people about Mount Vernon and give them kind of a tour of Mount Vernon from a child's perspective. So it really comes down to who you think your audience will be. So Anna's would be students maybe coming to DC and seeing Mount Vernon for the first time. And Knott's would be students who are suffering from bullies or for their parents. All right, what is my message? Again, we've kind of answered that. Anna's trying to get through, it's fun to visit Mount Vernon. Knott is trying to get through, if you've been bullied, you can get beyond it, and this is how. And he's also trying to get through to parents. This is what it really feels like when your child is in school and they say they're being bullied. All right, what voice am I using? That one's kind of a hard one to explain. So really want your students to not necessarily write this down in class, but really think about it. I do my best thinking when I'm brushing my teeth, or when I'm washing my hair, or something like that, or washing dishes. That's kind of where I do my best thinking. And it's kind of, I feel like it's a download from God. And to write a really great book that is going to help people dramatically, you have to have that download from God. God just kind of tells you the voice that you're going to use. So for Not, he used first person, but his voice was mainly of a narrator. My eyes frantically searched for a friend, even an enemy, from last year would work. There were none. They started filling with tears, and I quickly blinked them away. The sound of my heart, along with the sudden tightness in my nose, and my eyes started to redden. It terrified me. Everyone would know. Everyone was going to see me. A teacher pointed me to homeroom, and I slumped in a chair. It was the first hour of the first day, and I'd already failed. So the voice that he's using is that of what he felt that was happening to him when he was in middle school. He was projecting himself into that. The voice that William used in World War I was more of a reporter or narrator, something like that. He was kind of he was kind of reporting about the story. The voice that Charlotte used in the Mayflower Adventure was different. She actually pretended like she fell asleep, and she woke up on the Mayflower. And so she used the voice of a questioning young girl who was asking about the actual Mayflower people. So it's a totally different way of approaching it. And I want your children to be expressive and really think about how they're going to use their voice. But the way that they use their voice is almost like the words will pour out in their story once they have their voice. So this is really quite an important task. All right, so I want them to think about this probably at home and write that in. And then, how will readers' lives be different after reading my book? This is extremely important. This is something I really want you to talk about with your students in class. We've talked about the bullying with World War I. This was just a fun book about World War I. And the students' lives would be different because they'll know some more items about World War I that they probably wouldn't have read necessarily in their textbooks. And it's an adventure story of this young man. So it doesn't have to necessarily be super profound like the Bully, Broken, and Redeemed book. It can be something that's adventuresome and fun. But if you think about, if you're an author, and you think about what you want your readers to get out of what you've done, that will lead you to having a cohesive story into the end. So it's a very important aspect of their books. So make sure that they understand the importance of always thinking about their readers and thinking about their voice in their stories. So this is the only page for this week for your students in class. You can go, woo, not a lot. And they should have this done by next week. I'll see you later. Thank you.